If there are 3 things in this world that bring me pure, unadulterated joy, it's scrolling on the Tesco app until my eyes bleed, watching Great British cooking shows that no one under the age of 40 has heard of, and worshipping Gordon Ramsay. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, you
frozen, solid, disgusting, overcooked chicken.
Now, as a supposedly full-time master student, part-time humble bar wench, and part-time delusional wannabe full-time YouTuber, the bank isn't exactly flooded with cash at the moment, so I can't fulfill my desire to eat out at fancy restaurants 24/7, yet. So today I'm gonna test which game out of The Sims 3 and Sims 4 lets me create and run the best silly little virtual restaurant where I can watch my silly little Sims eat gourmet food instead, because I am on a mission to help gamers like us find meaningful experiences in our favorite life simulators, and I would consider wish fulfillment fall under that umbrella. So starting with The Sims 3, to be able to own and run a restaurant in this game, you need to at least purchase the It's Business Time industrial oven from the Sims 3 store, which costs 879 Sim points. I got mine when I bought the business as usual Bistro venue through the store, which goes on sale every so often under the daily deal section. If you want to find out a bit more about how to install Sims 3 store content and get items for cheaper, check out this video linked in the cards after this one if you're interested. Getting into the game then, as today's mission was in part wish fulfillment, I of course opted to play in Monte Vista because if I could literally only eat pasta for the rest of my life, I would die very happy. I chose Nicoletta Lombardi to be our test subject today. After yussifying Nicoletta, I jumped into Managed Worlds and changed the public pizzeria venue in the middle of town to be a hangout so we could purchase it. I also added the industrial oven from the store as well as the menu objects which come with that to now make this lot function as a restaurant. Then it was off to town hall to purchase our now not so public pizzeria. Then I got to customizing the restaurant settings. You do this by clicking on the industrial oven, and first it was time to adjust the lot opening time, so I went for 11 AM to 9 PM every day. Then it was time to set up the menu. I selected mainly Italian food items, of course, given the setting that we're playing in. The menu used to do this really wasn't user-friendly, to be honest. Next, I picked the quality of the chef that would spawn on the lot between the times that the restaurant was operational, and this would determine how much you pay them per shift. You can either get a line chef for 10 simoleons, a sous chef for 20 simoleons, or an executive chef for 40 simoleons. So to start off with, I went for a solid in the middle of the road and I hired Surya Nguyen to be our sous chef. Finally, you select how much your customers will pay for their meals. By default, the markup is set to 100%, but I switched this to 125% because I like money. With all of this set up out of the way then, a few in-game minutes later, it was time for the restaurant to open. Of course, we had to try our products out first, so I got Nicoletta to order a carbonara, and we paid 25 simoleons for that. It is a little bit strange how it's the chef that comes out to take your order. You can't hire any wait staff or anything like that. Despite having this store content in my game for a long time, I've never actually played with it, so I didn't know what to expect here. Honestly, Nicoletta just hung around the lot and kept calling her boyfriend while Surya ran the joint. Here I should probably mention the couple of parameters that I kept consistent across both playtests in The Sims 3 and 4. I kept my Sims needs static so I could just focus on the gameplay. I was going to be playing in each game for 5 sim days, and after buying the restaurants, the household income in each game was going to be dropped to just 100 simoleons to cover any running costs that may pop up as we go. But things were really chill on the first day. A good few customers turned up, some just sat at the empty tables and played on their laptops, but others actually ordered food. The animations seemed to go quite smoothly. Sims didn't get up after ordering food to change seats or anything like that, which is encouraging to see, given the reputation which I know The Sims 4 Dine Out has. Yes, this is foreshadowing. At the end of day 1, we finished with 214 simoleons. So in between starting with 100, taking out 20 for wages, and then 25 for our carbonara, which yes, I am counting as a business expense, we ended day 1 having earned 159 simoleons, so not too bad. On day 2, I promoted Surya to executive chef, but stupidly forgot to increase the food markup to the maximum of 150% until halfway through the service. The place got quite busy today, and I feel like I'd started to pick up on the vibe of customer behavior in The Sims 3. Our first customers for day 2 came in as a couple, but they didn't sit at the same table table, like one went outside and the other sat inside. There was also a point where we had about 4 individual customers waiting at once, but they just chilled out reading the menu until Saria got around to them. I don't think they had much concept of, oh, I've been reading this for 45 minutes and that shouldn't be acceptable. But other than those quirks, the day went smoothly and we ended with 318 simoleons in the bank. Honestly, I just speed through day 3 because I was seeing the same thing that I had done for the previous days, but we still ended up with 484 simoleons in total. Now, even just after 3 days into this playtest, I was kind of bored of the restaurant quote-unquote system in The Sims 3. My itch wasn't feeling particularly satisfied, or my pickle was only partially tickled, as it were. But as it turns out, the queen herself, a cotton sock, posted a video a few days before I started filming this one, which actually showcased an NRS mod, which modifies this store content just a little bit. So I decided to install it to see if it would make days 4 and 5 a little bit more interesting. The mod will be linked below, but basically it replaces the default oven and menu items, which will then allow you to set custom working hours, to hire a waiter in addition to a chef who you then pay per hour, and you can actually choose the specific Sims that you hire rather than them just being automatically assigned, and some other little bits and bobs like that. In setting things up with this mod now installed, I made the restaurant stay open between 10 AM and 10 PM, which would also end up being the case for The Sims 4. I managed to rehire Surya specifically as our chef, and I brought in a waitress called Trisha, who I believe is maybe a butler or maid in the game by default. This mod also thankfully changed the UI for setting up the menu to be one which is a little bit more clean and user-friendly. Now, I think that this was absolutely no fault of the mod that I'd installed, but on day 4, we unfortunately had absolutely 0 customers. And to top off this bad day, it was a full moon, so Saria literally turned into a zombie, then wandered back into the restaurant to keep cooking. Apparently we have 0 food hygiene in this place, and in a bit of an anticlimactic way, on day 5 we only had 1 customer show up for the whole 10 hours, despite it being leisure day where I thought that a lot more people would come by. Now I'll swing back around to how much money this adventure made us towards the end of this video, but for now, let's move on to The Sims 4. I don't think restaurants need a massive introduction in The Sims 4. They were released in the Dine Out game pack, which typically costs £17.99, but regularly goes on sale. This pack, alongside others like My Wedding Stories, is notorious in the community for being really buggy, so I didn't have high hopes going into this, as it's probably been at least 3 or 4 years since I've last played around with it. To zoom through this initial setup though, I found one of my favourite food-related TV personalities, Nigella Lawson, on the gallery and moved her into a penthouse in San Myshuno. I then found a restaurant on the gallery that was a renovation of the old Salt House lot in the Spice District, which was exactly what I was looking for, honestly. So I just plopped it down and renamed it to Nigella's Boudoir because, I don't know, it just felt like the right vibe. The origin ID for the creator of this lot will be down in the description if you fancy checking it out for yourself. Trying to keep the same element of consistency between my Sims 3 and Sims 4 playthroughs, I tried to fill the respective sections of the menu with as many Italian food items as I could. But I realized halfway through that I hadn't been paying attention to the difficulty of each of the menu items. On reflection, I don't think this really had any major consequences overall. I just get a notification a little while into each shift which stated that the quality of the dishes might suffer due to our chef's limited cooking abilities. Now, by default in the Dine Out pack, you have to hire 3 members of staff: the chef, the waiter, and the host. So automatically we're seeing a big difference to the vanilla Sims 3 experience. I tried picking out ones that had the highest skills as possible because yes, the staff members do have 2 skills that play into their performance on a shift. And this did mean though that I was going to be paying a little bit more per hour for our chef, but hopefully the quality of the food would balance this out. Thankfully, the creator of the lot had set up the smaller things like staff uniforms, so that was all left as it was for now, but after dropping the business funds to just 100 simoleons, it was time to get going. As I mentioned earlier, I kept the restaurant open from 10 AM to 10 PM each day, and after day 1, I was really shocked at how smoothly everything went. Really, there was minimal bugs that I could notice, and I had a lot of fun with it. Unlike in The Sims 3, it was cool that the owners could go around to customers to welcome them, to check in on tables, and to comp stuff if anything went wrong. It was nice to see how we had a steady stream of customers all day. We even had Judith Bloody Ward come in on what looked like a date with Mortimer Goth. I was sure to get the chef chef to prioritize their food so she couldn't slam us on Twitter. At the end of the day, you get this report which states your incomings and outgoings, what areas you could improve on, and it shows you whether your staff have skilled up while on shift, which again is pretty cool. Maybe my expectations were just kind of low coming out of The Sims 3, but I was shocked to see that we earned a little over 1,000 simoleons despite the high ingredient costs and wages that needed to be paid before net profit. We'd also gone from a 1-star establishment to a 2.5-star rating, which was exciting. But day 2 really brought me back down to earth. We kept bouncing between 2.5 and 3 stars, and we had a lot of customers walk out because Don Lothario, who was the waiter, glitched for ages and he couldn't take any food or orders. This was reflected in how we made more or less half of the profit of the day before, so I knew that some things needed to be changed going into day 3. Before opening the next day, I promoted Don despite his shoddy performance the previous day and hired a second waiter using the additional staff member perk to help cover the floor if a similar glitch were to come up in the future. I'd forgot that restaurants had a perk system, so this sense of progression was nice to see. I also took the opportunity to buy the patient patrons perk, which extended the time it takes for customers to get impatient or walk out if anything is taking too long. These changes made a world of a difference, with this being the most profitable day yet as we netted 1,331 simoleons. A food critic also visited Nigella's boudoir. I thought we could charm him, but he just called the place beige and gave us a savage 3-star rating, which was a little bit lame. But to try to prove him wrong, by the end of the day, I brought the perk that lets you select ingredient quality. One of the biggest areas for improvement that kept coming up throughout the previous days was our food quality, so I started buying organic ingredients which costed 10% more in the hopes that this would bring a bit of a boost while the chef was still improving his cooking and mixology skills. To try to combat this new cost going into day 4, I brought a temporary perk which decreases the cost of ingredients for 24 hours. I also paid 600 simoleons for the chef to go and get trained, which was reflected in his skills when he showed up for his next shift. The hostess was also getting pretty angry, so I promoted her as her skills had increased, and I didn't want her to quit on me and to have to start again with a new sim. Annoyingly, the Baghead neighborhood action plan thing came into effect during the shift, so get used to seeing this ridiculous sight in our fine dining establishment. Despite the few hiccups that we'd had, now having a larger and more skilled team was seemingly helping everything to go a lot more smoothly, and we had our most profitable day yet, earning over 1,500 simoleons. I was a little bit emboldened by this, I suppose you could say, because on day 5 I went balls to the wall. Using the perk points that we'd saved up, I bought the ones that unlocked a second chef position and a third waiter. I opened the restaurant at midnight to summon them over so I could pay for their basic trainings, which would then come into effect for the final shift on day 5 proper. After opening for the final time, I noticed that the amount of customers we'd had over that week had steadily increased. I don't know if this was because the star rating had gone up or because we had more staff, or if it was just a coincidence, but it meant that I started picking up on some more routing issues with the host station, and it felt like customers were a bit less inclined to stay in their seats, but overall things were going fairly smoothly. Thankfully, we didn't have any repeats of the Don glitch on day 2. But with that said, we unfortunately didn't make quite as much profit as the previous day, but we did finish day 5 with a 4.5-star rating. So then, with Nigella closing the doors of her boudoir for the final day, this brings us to the question which underpins this video. Which was best? Running a restaurant in The Sims 3 or Sims 4? Well, there are a few things which determined this for me. 1, did I have fun with the gameplay? And 2, did it nourish my inner demon that craves seeing little virtual money counters tick up? Let's start with the latter. The Sims 3 was very underwhelming in terms of the potential for restaurants to be a profitable moneymaker in the day-to-day. While we started with 100 simoleons, we ended with 53. However, on day 4 I did have to pay 197 simoleons in household bills, which I don't think is fair to count against the challenge as it's not necessarily related to the business. So we technically finished with 250 simoleons. Still, this was so disappointing to see. However, as we owned that lot, I would also assume that we would earn a good chunk of change on the restaurant each week, like you do with all other owned properties in the game. In The Sims 4, on the other hand, we finished with a whopping 4,876 simoleons. And this was even after spending about 1,000 throughout the week on staff training. So The Sims 4 obviously wins out in the ability for restaurants to be a satisfying source of income. but what about the gameplay? Well, if it wasn't obvious, The Sims 4 wins again, and that is really despite the bugs I came across. The Sims 3 turned out to be a watching simulator, to the point where one of my day recordings was literally 3 minutes long because I just speed 3'd the entire day. That's why I felt like I needed to try to spice things up with the business as unusual NRAS mod. I know we didn't get to see it in action a whole lot, but I liked the little layers of complexity and extra customization that it added, and I really don't believe that it was the reason why we saw fewer customers towards the end of the week. In the vanilla Sims 3 experience though, I felt like this was a very neat yet shallow time. What it added to the game worked, but maybe that was because there wasn't a lot to it that it had the potential to go wrong, I guess. I think the business as usual bistro venue would be worth adding to your game if you got it on sale from the store, and if your household owns the lot and visits it every so often to eat out at, rather than focusing on it from a filthy capitalist simulator perspective like I was today. But unlike in The Sims 3, with The Sims 4, I really didn't feel like I needed to add mods to make this experience fun. I really enjoyed seeing how I could level up the restaurant with perks, and how it was important to invest in your staff. I liked how there was the potential to scale. I probably gave myself a head start by opening with a well-decorated lot, but I can imagine there being a lot more challenge if you start with minimal money to run the restaurant in the first place. So overall, once again, I think I'm surprised to say that The Sims 4 wins out in this gameplay comparison. And I say once again because I did do a similar playtest and review a few weeks ago, but this time exploring whether running a bakery is better in The Sims 3 or 4. So if you fancy sticking around for that, definitely check it out. But for now, thanks so much for watching guys, and I'll see you again soon.